Hello and welcome to Alternative to Meds podcast. As always, we ask you to like, share, and subscribe to this amazing platform of integrative functional medicine and nutrition-minded holistic practitioners that are out there changing the world and the frontier of how they treat mental health and addiction. Today, I'm pleased to introduce a dear friend of mine who has taught me tremendous amount, Christina Veselak, and the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. And that's where I learned everything and continue to learn from this beautiful woman. Hello, Christina. How are you today?
Hello, Debbie. I'm great. And I'm so excited to and honored to be here with you. We've been on quite a journey together.
Yeah.
And to be at an Alternative to Meds podcast, because Alternative to Meds has done wonderful things and has been on a marvelous journey too.
Right. Well, I started this journey. It'll be 9 years. I'll be sober. And part of my journey was, how am I going to scale these problems? And I truly believed that there had to be a better solution that what netted less than 10% success rates. And I found it. I'm 9 years sober, and I owe my life to you. So I went through the academy and learned enormous amounts of things. So, Christina, how did you even get into doing integrative care? I mean, as a therapist, what inspired you to do this?
I think, Debbie, that my own journey was part of what inspired me to do this, because I had been physically and emotionally ill my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I discovered in college that I was allergic to eggs, and that eggs made my depression worse. And when I didn't eat eggs, my depression was better. Right. So that was the very first indication I had that maybe not all mental health issues are due to mental health situations.
Right.
Right? Trauma. I mean, I certainly had a lot of trauma, but if going off eggs made my depression a little better, a little more manageable, a little more bearable, then clearly not all my depression was due to trauma.
Right.
So that, you see, that planted a little seed. And then I became a therapist. And I started noticing that my female clients' symptoms were worse premenstrually. Aha, who'd have thought, right?
Right.
But that meant there was a biochemical issue going on. Now, my symptoms got worse premenstrually too. And I got more depressed premenstrually. And I got more angry and irritable and more liable to blow up at my husband if I missed a meal. Okay, so little by little, I started noticing these things and connecting the dots. And then serendipitously, or a God thing, I ended up discovering Julia Ross and her clinic, Recovery Systems, in Mill Valley. And she's one of the first people in the country using amino acids and other nutrients in an outpatient basis for addiction recovery.
Right.
And this was fascinating to me. And so I started learning from her and other people everything I could about amino acid therapy. Meanwhile, I made an appointment with her nutritionist to see if she could figure out why I had been ill my whole entire life and why all the doctors were washing their hands of me. And she did. Right? And it was like, oh, I want to be able to do what she just did.
I think we all feel that way, right?
Exactly. So I then went and first I got trained in Western herbal medicine. And then I got trained as a nutritionist through the American Health Science University and got certified in 1993. And I'm one of these people who sort of sticks their toe in the water. I have to do it slowly. I didn't really have a very effective internship, so I was sort of intimidated. And so I didn't do much with it. I did some with it. I we went to Alaska, and I was nutritionist at a treatment program there. And I was also the chef, and I made sure that we removed all sugar and they only got good food. But you know how in treatment programs they do searches, at least weekly for hidden drugs?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we would find bags of candy hidden in the closet and under the mattress.
That probably would have been me, because when I first got sober, if they could have injected a sea sucker in my arm, I would have taken it.
Well, sure, because you and everybody else had depleted neurotransmitters.
Yep.
And I kind of knew, but didn't really realize at that time that if we were giving those people, the ones hiding the candy under their mattress, the right amino acids, they wouldn't have the craving for the sugar.
Right.
I mean, I was getting some people on aminos, but I hadn't connected all the dots then.
Right.
Right. And then we moved to Denver, and I became assistant manager of a vitamin store for 3 years. And that kind of changed my whole life, because finally I got the hands-on training I needed, the hands-on practice I needed.
Right.
Because, working in a vitamin store is really frontline medical care.
Right.
And I built my confidence and I built my knowledge base, and I got to practice on people. And after 2.5 years of doing that, I was ready to build my own private practice again in Denver this time. I'd had a practice for almost 10 years in Berkeley, but now in Denver. But now I was ready to fully integrate the nutrition, the mental health nutrition, because I was applying everything I was learning. I was going to all the functional, pre-functional medicine trainings, and just learning as much as I possibly could. And now I was ready to integrate it all. And so while I was building my practice, Debbie, I got a job at a amino acid IV detox clinic in Denver, and I saw miracles.
Yeah.
I saw people with late stage alcohol use disorder, 0.6 blood alcohol level, walk into our outpatient clinic and walk out really 5 days later, but especially 10 days later, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, no cravings, no shaking, no seizure, clear-headed, no ammonia, functioning. And it was like, OMG, this was like the most miraculous thing I'd ever seen. And so I was there for about 2 to 3 years. And it really clarified for me everything I had learned, and I saw it in practice. I also saw people, after 10 days, bounce out of there convinced that they were cured because they felt so great, only to crawl back in 3 months later saying, but I thought I was cured. Yeah. And we said, well, did you keep eating protein every 4 hours? No. Did you keep taking your supplements and your oral amino acids? No, I gave that up. I was feeling too good. Did you do any of your trauma work? No, that's for sissies. Did you go to meetings? Of course not. I see. And here you are back again. Now, what do you want to do differently this time?
I'm a testament. I truly believe, because once I started learning like the protein aspect and the hypoglycemia, that was me. So I would wake up in the morning, you stumble out of bed, grab yourself a cup of coffee. I would rush throughout the day. I didn't eat until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd have a snack or something. And then of course you have that crash, right?
Right.
And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was, I need a drink for sure, because I was like this, and and it wasn't until going through the academy did I really learn how much that was the precursor to a relapse. And,
Yes.
and that was the sad thing, I think, is that most treatment centers never speak of that. And yet, if you talk to people who have, mental health addiction, it's all the same. All the same. I don't care, people, it's the same. It's the same thing. Because when our anxiety ramps up, the first thing that we go to is, what am I going to do to calm it down? Okay.
It's all variations on the same theme.
Same thing. And it's just what substances that we use. So whether someone is now needing a Xanax or they get a drink or various things, and never really making a correlation of how much my diet influenced my cravings.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And it's a three-legged stool. So we start with the brain. We start with bringing the brain back online, rebuilding neurotransmitter systems using the amino acids and diet, keeping blood sugar absolutely stable. And what that does, Debbie, is that gets people stable enough and supported enough biochemically that we can then do the rest of the work.
Right.
That we can then learn our recovery skills, engage in treatment, get ourselves to meetings on time and sit there for the whole thing and actually listen, right? Do our trauma work, explore our spirituality, practice prayer. All of that requires a stable brain. It's not a one-legged stool, it's a three-legged stool.
How often do people have to use the amino acids? I mean, what is your recommendation? So once you work through getting a protocol for someone, is it lifelong? Is it short term? Like you said, you talked about people leaving immediately. I'm cured. I personally use my aminos every day. I use my protocol and I know how to adjust the dose, but I mean, what's your recommendation? How do you advise people?
But you see, that's the key, Debbie, is adjusting your dose. So these people got to walk out 10 days later, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, because it was going straight into their bloodstream.
Right.
Straight into their brain. Right. But that was just the first step. That was why we sent them home with oral amino acids that we recommended that they take for at least 8 months to rebuild the neurotransmitter system so that a good diet and the right exercise and the right sleep could maintain them. Okay. Right? And so for some people, that's all they need. For people with a lot of genetic SNPs, and many of us do, we require amino acid support for our whole lives. So I actually needed to be on my aminos for about 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
Then I got myself stable enough, more physically healthy, more emotionally healthy, did some of my trauma work, and got myself to the point where I didn't need the really intense stuff, right? Where I could get by with just a little bit. And then for a while, I could get by with good food. Okay, I always did good food and did all the right stuff, but I didn't need aminos for a while until I went through menopause. And then it was like, oops.
Yeah.
And so I started bringing in these other things. And now to maintain my mood and my energy, I stay on a good multivitamin. I'm on the fish oil. I'm one of those people who require GLA to stay undepressed. So I take the borage oil capsule every day. And then I take the other aminos as needed. So sometimes I need some extra 5-HTP. Sometimes I need some extra tyrosine. Occasionally I need some theanine to relax enough to go to sleep, but not every night. And this is the wonder of amino acids, is that we get to take them both in a protocol form to rebuild the foundation, and then we get to take them as needed.
Right. This is going to roll right into what I want everyone to know about, is that the Academy is twofold. It's for people that are someone who's a therapist, someone who's a coach, but there's also moms that just want to learn what they need to do for their children and how to manage their child's ADHD or their OCD behaviors, or they want to avoid medications and they're not sure how to go about it. This is a very comprehensive academy that Christina has created and a platform so that people can walk away. But you also, so explain a little bit about the academy, why you created it, but you now have a new mini program, right?
Right. Well, I'll get that to a moment because you just sort of jogged the memory. Over the past, 6 months, I'd say, I've had 3 students with 5-year-old children who were out of control at school, out of control at home, panicking. One child was violent with other children on the playground. Another child would have panic attacks and throw tantrums when she was dropped off at school and would shriek and scream for 2 hours because she had such separation anxiety. And it turned out that in all 3 of these cases, the child had this genetic disorder that we call pyroluria that leads to a profound deficiency in zinc and B6, so that anybody, whether you're 5 or you're 50, if you don't have enough zinc and B6, you cannot make your neurotransmitters. So you don't have the resources to step up and deal with stress and calm yourself down and access your coping skills because your brain is just, off wandering elsewhere. And so bringing in the right protocol for these 3 children completely changed, age of 5, the trajectory of their lives and their families' lives.
Christina, that's so sweet. Just because I love that there's if you're out there and you have children who are, this academy is life-changing resources to help you learn. And if you can't, there's resources that are out there. But the saddest part is, Christina, I also work with, placement at times with alternative to meds. I'll work with treatment centers. I have for years. And the most heart-wrenching phone calls are coming from parents that, 8-year-olds are getting put on antipsychotics, and 6-year-olds and getting diagnosed with some pretty hefty diagnosis that you look at them and go, is there something more going on? Right? I mean, we already know we all experienced COVID, and as adults, we were stressed. But we had these children that were via Zoom diagnosed and put on these very debilitating medications, but more importantly, with those diagnoses for the rest of their lives.
Well, exactly. And then these meds are hard to get off, and you go into withdrawal. So you think you need to be on the meds, and round and round and round we go. When most of the time, okay, not all the time,
right?
There's a little place for meds. Absolutely,
right.
There is. Okay?
Right.
Most of the time, people have starving brains. These little 5-year-old girls had starving brains, not because their parents weren't feeding them well enough, but because they had these genetic anomalies.
Right.
And lots of parents don't feed their kids well enough. And a lot of kids are really picky eaters and won't eat what they're fed. And down we go.
Right.
Right.
Well, all we have to look at is the brand new food pyramid for the United States. And anyone that's a nutritionist or into nutrition would roll their eyes, just like Christina saying, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, a processed cereal is better for you than, nutrition such as whole foods. If it comes out of a package, we really have to start looking at what we're really consuming, not to mention just the quality of the food chain in which we're getting it.
Well, we need to be thinking about, and here's the bottom line, Debbie. We actually know, science has uncovered what nutrients our brains need to function optimally. We know what these nutrients are.
Right.
Okay. And while everybody's a little different and needs slightly different ratios of things, right? We still need a certain amount of amino acids and protein. We need very specific vitamins and minerals. We need very specific fats. If our brains get these foods regularly throughout the day, they function optimally. Genetics aside, right?
Right.
However, none of us as mothers, as well, as parents, as adults, as teenagers in school. I was certainly not taught this in my psychotherapy training, what the nutrients were that the brain needed to function optimally, and what happened if the brain did not get these nutrients. Okay,
Now
just an example. Yeah, if we don't get enough of the omega-3 fatty acids, we get depressed. If we don't have enough cholesterol, we get suicidal. If we don't have enough B vitamins, we can be anxious and irritable and can't sleep. So as mental health providers, none of us were taught to ask our clients what they ate. So how do we know without asking? Okay, how do we know if our client's symptoms are coming from a nutrient deficiency versus trauma?
Right.
And how do we know that their inability to deal with their trauma isn't due to the nutritional deficiencies they're sitting on if we don't ask them?
Right. So what is an amino acid? So like, people will, I take this medication. What is an amino acid? Because we talk about amino acids, what are they?
Okay. So amino acids are tiny little molecules that clump together to form protein. Okay, they're found in all foods, they're found, everywhere, but there's certain foods that have a lot of very specific amino acids, and we call these protein foods. Your meats, your fishes, your milk products, etc. So a lot of protein from amino acids clump together. When we eat and digest this protein, the digestive process breaks the protein back down into these tiny little amino acids. This is how we get it into our body. They then get into the bloodstream and go everywhere in the body doing all sorts of things, right? They make our skin and our muscle and our enzymes. They make our genes, okay? They do lots and lots of things. Some of them get into the brain and make our neurotransmitters, our mood-mediating neurotransmitters. And that's why we need to be eating enough protein every day, not just to keep ourselves alive and our lungs working and our heart beating and our skin intact, but enough left over to actually fully build our neurotransmitter systems. So here's my motto. Ready for my motto?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. It's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully. Gracefully. But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally. So have you fed your brain today?
I don't think anybody ever, it's kind of like, this is our body and the brain is separate.
Right.
That's psychiatry. It's kind of like, we don't really need to do any tests on you. It's in your head. Basically, it's in your head. It's in your brain.
Right.
And people have forever been saying, well, I have mental health. I'm mentally ill. Right. Yeah. But unlike any other illness that we experience in life, it's just kind of like you forever are going to be mentally ill. Instead of, what is it that I need to do to heal this problem that I have dealing with? And we all have predispositions. Like, you know me, I'm about as, I run around. That's why I said I'm not ADD. You can have all different diagnostic codes that are attributed to you. I think the difference of what the academy and what I learned from you was, all right, this is your predisposition, Debbie. How are you going to nourish your body to deal with that?
Yes.
And I recognized in trauma, because I experienced trauma, I was not nourishing my body adequately to rebound or even being able to cope with that. So the first thing you reach for is a substance or sugar or things that you don't need, because we're primal in the sense, well, this works. I feel bad, and until it doesn't.
Until it doesn't. And then it's a downward spiral,
right,
rather than an upward spiral.
Right. And that was the big difference. like if you were to see me, like when I started till now, 9 years later, 9 years later, Christine, can you believe it? 9 years.
Congratulations, Debbie.
Yeah, 9 years. That how many people that I went through treatment with that didn't make it? How many people I went through that are just back to their same things?
Mhm.
And instead, I can say at 56 going on 57 years old, I feel better now than I did 9 years ago. And it was part of it is the recovery part, but it's physically, I started associating what I needed to eat for my brain.
Yes. Mhm.
And that's what the academy taught me was what I needed to eat for my brain. Does it actually, now that's the other thing you talked about, that you actually stepped off from what you did. Taking the aminos and the dietary things, will it actually restore the neurotransmitters?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it does.
And some people need to take them forever and other people don't, and their neurotransmitters can stay restored. But yes, these neurotransmitters can be restored.
Are there side effects that people should be aware of with different aminos? Now, a lot of times
No.
people think aminos and they think of workout aminos, like, oh, I take workout aminos. These are different, right?
These are different. These are very, very specific ones that actually allow the brain to make the neurotransmitters. No, there are no side effects when you take the right dose of the amino acid for your own neurotransmitter deficiency. Now, if you don't need the amino, if that neurotransmitter is nice and happy, yeah, you might get some side effects because you don't need it. Okay, like drinking, 3 cups of coffee rather than half a cup of coffee.
Right.
All you needed was half a cup of coffee. You didn't need 3 cups. Okay.
Right.
And your body will tell you that for the next several hours. Okay, it's not going to kill you.
Right.
You're just going to be
Right.
a little amped up. Okay. There are some precautions with some of the aminos. For instance, you don't want to be taking tryptophan or 5-HTP if you're on more than one serotonergic medication. And if you're on just one, you can, and it can be helpful, but you need to know what you're doing.
Right.
And the coaches who graduate from my program know what they're doing.
Right.
And so, this is why we always have a precaution chart. There's just sort of guidelines along with the amino acid therapy chart that we have people fill out so we know how to dose them. But in general, you can buy aminos over the counter. They're safe.
Right. Are there particular brands that you recommend?
They pretty much are all sourced from the same place. So a number of brands, do a good job packaging the aminos. I just recommend that you buy capsules and that pretty much the only thing in there is the amino acid.
Right. So there's no filler.
We don't need food color, right? And we don't need wax. And we don't need junk in our amino acids.
Right.
That's my bottom line. So you asked about the academy. We have a brand new introductory course that's 6 hours. It's really a nutrition toolbox for peer coaches, for parents, for people in recovery who don't know anything about nutrition, who've never really thought about how nutrition could apply to recovery or have thought about it, but are hungry for more information. So it's a little 6-hour course that we started last night, and we're offering once a month for the next 4 months, $180. And just really interesting. We talk about some of the pioneers, the people who first started using nutrition for recovery, and some, ideas about how to use aminos and diet and ways you can support your sleep. So it's just a very sweet little beginner course.
Okay.
And then we have our level 1 certification, which is a 10-month program. It's for professionals, but it's also for people who may want to become professionals. And no matter what you're going to do with it, you really want to become expert at amino acid therapy. So at the end of the 10 months, you will be an expert at amino acid therapy, as well as using diet and other nutrients to feed the brain optimally.
You started your own movement that was protein. Basically, you kept saying, because you've been so adamant about talking about protein every 4 hours. Share a little bit about that, how you started that.
Okay, well, let me just tell you about level 2, then I'll talk to you
Okay, that's right.
about my nonprofit.
Okay.
So the diet and the amino acids change lives dramatically about 80% of the time. 20% of the time, it all falls flat. Nothing changes. Okay? And no, it's not that you're taking the wrong aminos, it's that something else is going on underneath. It could be a genetic disorder. It could be a stealth infection like Lyme disease or even COVID, right? It could be digestive issues or hormone issues, that those need to be fixed first.
Right.
And until we fix those, not much else is going to change. So my level 2 training, which is an 8-month course, goes through all of those other things, not all of them, but a lot of those other things that when they are out of balance will absolutely dramatically impact mental health, emotional well-being, and therefore addiction recovery. And so for the nutritionists in my course, I'm trying to teach the nutritionists how to apply their wonderful knowledge to mental health and addiction recovery. And for my therapists in the course, because I have both, I've even had psychiatrists in my course, I'm teaching them how to identify the red flag symptoms that may have been missed by the psychiatrists and the doctors. Happens all the time, and say to their client, oh, you've got these symptoms that might indicate, can't diagnose, might indicate this disorder. Here's some primary assessment we can do. Oh yeah, you score really high on this assessment. Now go to this medical professional and actually get it formally diagnosed and effectively treated. Because otherwise, these people will cycle through treatment programs without these underlying issues getting addressed.
Well, isn't there a high percentage of people with pyroluria that have addiction issues? Hasn't that been proven?
At least 40 to 60%.
Right.
Yeah.
And these young children, they were diagnosed with it. And honestly, it was like, it is very treatable. But unfortunately, if you're just if you're going in with just these symptoms and you're getting diagnosed other things, it certainly is worth the effort of finding out and ruling those sort of things out. But especially for addiction, like you said, addiction, we've got hypoglycemia, pyroluria, these sort of conditions that are actually attributing to the person's addiction.
Heartburn.
Heartburn.
Okay.
All right.
Heartburn is a sign in most people, not everybody, that the body is actually not producing enough hydrochloric acid and not breaking down the protein. So you may even be eating enough protein, but you're not breaking it down to its little tiny pieces of amino acids because you don't have enough hydrochloric acid. Then you get heartburn and the doctor puts you on a proton pump inhibitor. So you're digesting even less of your food. And you now are in malnutrition, but don't know it. And you're depressed and you're anxious and you have increased dementia and you have increased osteopenia. And, you can't deal with recovery because you're too depressed and anxious. And it's because you need to go on the right digestive enzymes so that everything can now fall in place and you're actually digesting and absorbing the food that you're eating.
That was me. I mean, I didn't digest protein. And so without digesting the protein, I needed the digestive enzymes within my system and had a difficult time. And so again, one metaphor I like to use to people is it's like we all have our own jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly.
But it's individualized. The difference is that when you have professionals like yourself, there's someone over in that corner saying, I think I have this section figured out. It doesn't mean it's the entire puzzle, because it's not negating that someone doesn't have to work on the therapeutic aspect.
Exactly.
But without the other, we can't ever complete the puzzle. We can't ever.
I love that. Yes, exactly.
We can't complete it. So the difference is, how do you bring on the different people or the knowledge if you're on your own? I had gone through treatment, but I was on my own when it came to learning this aspect. When I left treatment, I went on this quest, and I found you, and I found the work of Julia Ross and Patty Reese, who's a nutritionist, and all these people. And all of a sudden, this huge light bulb went off, where it was like, I thought that I was pretty nutrition oriented, better than most, I would say, but never had I really understood that there was imbalances or deficiencies within my diet that were contributing to all of these other problems. Yeah. So again, wherever you're at and wherever you're doing, there's different levels of education that are available. I think that your course, I think everyone should go. I think every parent should go through it. I really do. In this day and age, I think if every parent understood what they could do for these conditions, like what you said, these meltdowns that are happening, that everyone goes, oh, well, this child just needs a special class. This child is this.
Medication.
Right, it needs medication in order to go to school, and they need this and that. And instead, they really just needed the right proteins in their diet and the right aminos to heal. That isn't any different with any of us. It's all of us.
It's all every single one of us.
Right.
And that, Debbie, is why I created my nonprofit organization, Eating Protein Saves Lives.
Right.
And I do ask all of your listeners to please support us. It's run on donation only. Okay. And our mission is to get the word out into the world that missing a meal is probably the #1 relapse trigger for all addiction, because of what happens in the brain when a meal is missed. Some very, very specific things happen that make us lose access to our recovery skills and destabilize us. Okay, so we recommend eating protein every 3 to 4 hours, very, very, very consistently. And this turns people's lives around. This stops chronic relapsing. It stops intense cravings, even for sugar, because so many people switch addiction to sugar in early recovery. Well, you eat that protein every 3 to 4 hours, and the sugar cravings go away.
Right.
Right, but nobody knows this. Okay, the natural health world's known this for 70 years, but it's not talked about in treatment. It's not talked about in school.
Oh, well, usually they drop you off to pick up your bag of candy and your bar.
Yeah, exactly.
The meeting.
Exactly.
You get more caffeine at the meeting, and no one connects that the reason the whole room is filled with people that are vaping, smoking, eating enormous amounts of sugar, and slamming enormous amounts of caffeine is they're not getting the same fix from what they used to have. So they've now shifted to other things.
Right. But they still have starving brains.
Right. Yep. And that was the big shift that happened with me when I started realizing there are additional tools that will take me from less than 10% success rate to 9 years of sobriety and more. There's tools. And it's not negating the other tools. That's the other thing. I don't want people getting all angry that we're not saying anything about 12-step or anything else not being imperative to this journey as well, if that's your choice. I'm saying that this is an additional piece.
This is the foundation. You see, I don't call this another recovery pathway.
Right.
Because it's not another recovery pathway.
Not.
It is the foundation for all recovery pathways. Because unless you have a functioning brain, you're not going to engage robustly no matter what recovery pathway you choose. This feeding your brain optimally is what allows you to work a 12-step program, work a smart recovery program, do whatever you need to do to get well, work on your trauma, work on your isolation. To do that, we need a functioning brain. So it's the underpinning. It's the foundation from which you then, it's the starting gate of successful recovery.
I totally agree. There are more and more treatment programs that are starting to understand this vital piece and implementing nutrition and amino acids. Now, they're not frequent, and unfortunately, those are the ones that people keep recycling in and out, but there is a reform that's happening. Now, some places that's their foundation. They've always had it. That's alternative to meds. But I'm pleased to say the treatment program I went to now offers amino acids and nutrition.
Wonderful. And I want to say to all your listeners, any of you who work in a treatment program that does use aminos, please let me know so that you can be listed on our website.
There's getting to be a growing movement. Thank goodness. I think that these platforms that we're building, our goal is to link arms with every practitioner and shout it off from the rooftops.
Exactly.
And keep saying there's billions of people that are suffering. You need not. There are resources. So if you can't do this, do the academy. Go as a parent, learn from the best of the people who are pioneers. If you can't do the academy, here's a book, here's this. There are resources that will change your life.
Well, there are. And Debbie, I want to share one more resource with you. Okay. From our nonprofit, Eating Protein Saves Lives, we did a 7-day 7-day Eat Protein Challenge. And so it's now on demand, a little kind of presentation for 7 days with ideas and tips about how you can integrate this into your life. But from that, we started a brand new type of online recovery meeting. It's called Feeding Recovery Network. And we currently have 3 meetings a week. One is just for a sober living house. The other 2 are open. And it's for people to come and get support around changing up your diet, around getting enough sleep, around taking care of your physical body in recovery. Because this is never talked about in other, treatment meetings, right? So you can now come to our Feeding Recovery Network meeting, learn more about eating protein and the other nutrients needed for effective recovery, get support, brainstorm about, some of your barriers and roadblocks. And we do plan on changing the world.
Me too.
With our Feeding Recovery Network meetings. But they need your support. We need support.
Right. Yeah. I think all of these endeavors that multiple people, it doesn't matter who it is, the more that we link and have people go on, it's super important that we utilize technology in this day and age, share, like, subscribe, support, because this work has changed the life of 3 children. You just immediately Lyle Murphy changed the life of a young boy over in Portugal. Same thing. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and it was really, he was lacking a protein enzyme within his brain. He was on antipsychotics at age 6. Now, again, I give this disclosure every time we do these podcasts. We don't advocate for anyone to get themselves off of the medication without the help of a provider, and certainly a provider that understands the ramifications. When you stop a medication instantaneously, there are grave consequences to that. You have to work with somebody who knows what they're doing. Many people are in a position in recovery or mental health, they're no longer even taking a medication, but they're still suffering and don't want to go back onto medications, don't They're in recovery. They're just hanging on by dear life, but they're miserable. They don't feel well. That was me.
Mhm.
I mean, when I couldn't function. I felt terrible physically. I felt absolutely horrific. I didn't know how I was going to work. I felt so bad. And everyone said, well, it's just, you need to get better. Well, I didn't know how to get better. What do you mean get better? All I kept saying was, I don't know how I can concentrate. I was used to taking large doses of Adderall. So all the Adderall people out there, I'm here to tell you, their amino acid therapy absolutely changed my life because I finally had something besides Adderall to take.
Exactly.
To manage it. And again, there's therapeutic things as well. It doesn't mean I don't have predisposition. So there's other things. But when I first got off of that, because that's what happens is, all right, we're taking this away. And here's an approved one that you can have, which still, right, there's the approved medication you can take. I'm like, it doesn't really work. And in the meantime, I can't function. Right. And I remember saying that. I said, I can't function. I can't function. And it was learning this and going, I get it. I get it now. Really, I just needed to learn how to feed my brain. And everyone always talked about nutrition in a different sense, but no one ever talked about our brain. No one said, it's here.
Exactly.
What do you do when you feed your brain?
Right. We're all told that we need to eat healthy, right? And we say, yeah. I'll start tomorrow. I know I need to eat healthy. But nobody says you need to eat protein every 4 hours along with other real food to support your recovery journey, to reduce your cravings, to reduce your relapses, to help your brain go in a straight line so that you can function and get yourself to the next meeting.
Right. Or you can be a good parent. You can actually show up for your family. You can actually be a good employee because you actually can focus and function. So there's, like I've always said, is like, okay, there's addiction, there's drug dependency, then there's the whole gamut of just life. All the people out there that are just suffering from anxiety and depression and can't focus. And that epidemic is exploding. Since the pandemic, it is exploding because we now when you go onto TikTok, people are excited because they got 19 pills of the Adderall. I finally got it. It's like they won the lottery because there's a shortage. Mm-hmm. There's a shortage. And my heart aches because if they only knew that there's something they could take that actually repaired the neurotransmitters, that actually fed your brain, that didn't create a dependency and catastrophic side effects.
Exactly.
You know, I actually have vision loss from my use of Adderall.
Really? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, vision loss. There's all different things that are attributed to it, but no one ever told me that when I took it. Right. And if I had known that there was something, no one told me that you're actually going to build more receptors. And you're on a hamster wheel from hell that you're never going to get off of. Right. No one told me that. So none of that. That's when we're talking about that the side effects are nominal. It's extremely safe.
And anti-addictive.
What?
It's anti-addictive.
Exactly.
Because it's rebuilding your neurotransmitter systems rather than draining them.
True. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I think about the 10 years of taking Adderall and what that created opposed to, 8 years of taking amino acids, I don't know that I would have said I felt great. Matter of fact, I honestly think that even on high doses of Adderall, my ADD was worse.
Yeah, makes sense.
It wasn't better. It was worse, except I was so dependent at that point. That's how I woke up. That's how I survived my day. And I was totally convinced that this was rectifying a horrible problem within my system, never knowing there was something that would actually help heal my brain.
Right.
Never knowing. And that's the part that we are going to expose on this platform. And people are joining forces to say there is a better way.
Yes, we're change makers.
Change makers. We're doing it. We love
sure
it.
are.
I think that, your tireless work, Christina has been an activist on platforms. She has lended, I mean, just even today, lending your time. You've tirelessly continued to get that word out there. And I feel such a sense of gratitude towards you for where I'm at now. And I want to share this with people. I sincerely do, because I feel sad when I hear people, and at the same time you'll see them, and in my heart I know there's a better way, and we're going to do something about it, Christina. We are.
And we are. And I mean, wrong words, okay, Debbie, but I'm so proud of you.
Thanks. Well, I couldn't be where I'm at without the likes of you, Patty Reese, Lyle Murphy. Like I said, when I started working with him, I learned all about the environmental toxins and how much that contributed. And I really did. I look completely different now. A lot of that was just, I do. I cleaned up my diet big time. And it's funny because the foods that you once found yourself so addicted to, like I won't give up C's chocolate, I'm sorry, I won't. But I know now what influences my mental health. And I'm addicted to feeling good.
Yes, me too.
I'm addicted to feeling good. And, I love how I feel now, but that came with step by step, baby steps. I didn't learn this overnight, and it felt super overwhelming. I remember taking the classes with you, and it felt so overwhelming. And now it's such second nature that I will reach in and grab, oh, I need this. I need some more tyrosine. I don't have enough tryptophan. And I know how to apply those aminos into my diet now, into my life. And I know what foods my body needs now. And that has been attributed to the Academy and what I learned from you guys.
I'm so happy. I'm so thrilled to hear that, because that's our mission.
Yeah, it is.
People's lives
And
then change the world.
Treatment centers need to send their people here. They need to send their therapists to this academy. They need to start realizing that I have many therapist friends, and I've said I'm not minimizing the importance of therapy, but I'm perplexed, like you said, that no one bothers to ask the question, what are you eating?
Right.
It's like they could be living off of coffee and donuts and not, and everyone's going, oh, this poor person, they've got OCD and anxiety, and it's just terrible. And we never, ever ask the question, what are you eating?
Right. Or what did you eat today? They come into my office for a psychotherapy session, because I've been licensed psychotherapist for 40 years.
Right.
And they're bouncing off the walls, or they're in this rage that they can't get out of. And I ask, when was the last time you ate protein today? And they said, 9 hours ago. So I say, may I feed you? And I feed them real food. I have them rate their symptoms on a scale of 0 to 10 before I feed them. And then 20 minutes later, and Debbie, people's bodies change, their faces change, their emotions settle down. They can now actually function in the therapy session once I feed their brains.
So for all the vegan people out there, what do you advocate for?
A moderate, not too much, a moderate amount of soy. Okay. Lots of nuts and beans and seeds. Patty Reese likes throwing hemp seeds on everything.
I know, I learned that from her. I use hemp seeds on everything now.
Just for that extra protein boost. Get the extra supplements you need, the extra carnitine and biotin and B12, the things that you really can't get from a vegan diet. Count your protein grams. It's crucial.
How many grams of protein do you recommend per day?
20 grams every 4 hours.
Wow.
More or less. Some people need more. Some people need a lot more. Some people need a little less. But that's a nice starting point. So 80 grams of protein a day.
Wow. Okay. I know, like for me, I love my nuts, my seeds. I love hemp seeds. That's what Patty had really, I learned a lot from the academy because it was like brain balls. There were recipes that were taught throughout it. And it, like I said, it's like an aha moment, like, oh, well, I never really thought of this. And
Yeah, lentils are great.
yep. Red lentils. I love red lentils in particular because they actually help build iron. And I discovered that with the depletion of iron, it wasn't giving me enough for my brain. Again, I can't process things. So there are alternatives. So it's not just meat protein. However, you have to do a little bit more in order to achieve that.
Exactly. You do. And you have to pay attention.
Right. Thank you, Christina, for taking the time.
You're so welcome, Debbie.
I'm forever in debt to you and the academy. And I refer people constantly to this academy, treatment centers, therapists, moms, dads, people in general. You will never get such top-notch education as you do from this academy. And you can apply it, whether you want to be a health coach, whether it's just for your own personal life. And we'll have links below for both the academy, for the nonprofit organization that Christina has started, the Alliance for Addiction and Mental Health Solutions that you're a part of, that I was a part of for years, that I feel so adamantly about. But please, it's so important, get this word out, because those children, like what you've helped or what Lyle helped, they're relying on this. Like, we have to get the word out there that this mass mental health addiction crisis that we have going on within the world is a mass nutritional deficiency as well.
Exactly.
So beyond our stresses. So thank you
for power to you.
Yes, I love you. Thank you so much, Christina, for taking the time to be a part of this vital podcast and this platform we've created of activists like yourself. And thank you. And like I said, the links are below. If you want to join the academy, I would highly recommend it. If you're a treatment center and you're interested in bringing on these approaches, Christina also does consultant work where she brings on a team of people. They go to treatment centers, help reform, bring on this integrative approach. So thank you, Christina, for taking the time today.
And thank you, Debbie. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.